All right, I think we're live now. What's up, everybody? Hopefully your Monday went fantastic. We are here to Tuesday. We got a 3-game slate, so I'm just gonna do like members only free to everybody. 5 picks, pretty much makes up almost everybody you're going to be looking at. So on a 3-game slate like this, a lot of times we'll just do members only free to the public. Click that thumbs up button. Let's dive right in, guys. So I've been trying to wait a little bit on ownership percentage, and it's not quite out yet. So just for time constraints, I had to jump in, but I'll give you guys my thoughts and opinions. Taking ownership into account, that'll all come out in the write-up later on today. Let's start with the first game. Let's break it down team by team to see who we're interested. We'll start with my Milwaukee Bucks and just say, you should have plenty of money tonight. So it's going to be pretty easy to get to Giannis. I don't think he's anywhere close to a lock to hit great value for 11-4. But with all the money that you're going to have at your disposal, there's plenty of cheap plays, and I'm sure we'll get even more. You got a desperate Bucks team who's had, we've lost most of our starters, right? Like DiVincenzo hasn't been all year, Middleton's out, Brook Lopez only played 1 game, Holiday's working his ways back. So it's really all rested on the shoulders of Giannis. And from a DFS perspective, he's been solid all year long. Had a rough game against the Knicks from a DFS perspective. The rebounds weren't there. Other than that, it's just kind of easy to get there. So I think you just kind of lock them in. Are there guys like, if you want to double up on, Trey and Dame and stuff like that to be a little bit more contrarian? All right, man, go do your thing. I completely understand. But I think Giannis is he's really, really simple to get to right now. So I'm going to take a look at him. The next guy that might get some consideration is going to be Bobby Portis. Monster game against Washington. I think he's, quote unquote, in play. The big bump in minutes is really, really nice. If I had to guess a score for him, I'd say about 30 would be my guess. So, he's definitely in play. My guess is, probably a good cash game play. I don't know if I would go as far as to call him a must, though. So I like him, not a love situation. And then you got Drew Holiday, who's, very affordable at 6,400. Hasn't done anything yet this year to hit any version of value on this price tag. Is tonight the night? Definitely could be, right? You got a desperate Bucks team. His minutes, he got hurt the first game. They were very wishy-washy with him against the Spurs, and then he was out. Only played 20 minutes against the Knicks. They got him in there for 30 minutes the other day, so I like him. This is one I definitely want to check back on ownership, and I will let you guys know in the write-up, or Matt will let you guys know in the write-up as far as whether or not we want to look at him in GPPs or cash or not at all. He needs to start playing more and better, simply because, Milwaukee needs him. He shot poorly the last 2 games, probably a byproduct of being out. Could be a good night to turn around. You got Philly, who played a hard game last night, obviously missing most of their best players and everything like that. So this is a good spot for him. And then the other guy that I think is wildly in play just because he's so needed is Grayson Allen. We've never seen Grayson Allen play this many minutes in his career. He's coming in hot. 3 balls been falling effectively lately. We know he's an excellent 3-point shooter. So, he's been very consistent all year. He has got 1 bad game, and it came at Detroit when he only had to play 21 minutes. I don't picture this as the game where he only plays 21 minutes. So I think he is a solid filler piece. I definitely won't go as far as to call him a must, but Milwaukee's got several people in play tonight as they continue to be shorthanded. And that doesn't even take into account the Conningtons, the Norrs of the world. They're just not going to be priorities for me. Moving over to Philadelphia, again, shorthanded. Embiid's out for a few games. We have no Harris. We got no Thibault. We all know what's going on with, Ben Simmons. So we start with Andre Drummond, who got a major and a deserved price bump. So I think the thing to note with Andre Drummond is 7,700 might seem like a lot, but let's just, let's hop in the time machine for a second. Remember, this is a guy who's been 8K, 9K at many points throughout his career. And while if this was like a long-term thing, I don't think they'd be looking to play him monster minutes the night after playing 38 hard-fought minutes. It's not, though. Like, Embiid's going to be out for a little bit, but he'll be back sooner than later. So I do think that, just probably going with Drummond right here is probably the easy move. A lot of boards last night. That probably takes a little bit of a dip here. But maybe not, because, Milwaukee's small right now. So Andre Drummond should really have his way in the paint tonight. This game's in Philadelphia. So I do think Drummond is, even at 7,700, I mean, if they're going to play him 38 minutes, which there's no guarantee he gets that tonight, but I'm assuming he'll get plenty of love, and they don't have anybody else really around him. It's a bunch of shooters. So, I think he's wildly in play. So the guy that kind of threw us for a loop last night, and I ended up getting really busy and wasn't able to play last night. And so I can't really do the revisionist history thing with Shake Milton, which was they took him out of the starting lineup. That would have given me big time cause for pause. I assumed Shake was going to stay in the starting lineup. They changed things around. Only played 22 minutes. That's the number I'm looking for because he had a really bad first run. He played well in the second half, but only 22 minutes. If he's outside the starting lineup again today, which I have no reason to believe he won't, I'm not really that interested. If he was starting and I thought he'd play 35 minutes like he did against Chicago and Detroit, I would be very, very interested. And so this is one where I do care whether or not he's starting. Outside of that, I think you got, Maxey, Curry, Korkmaz, Danny Green, Niang. These guys are all quote unquote in play. I don't think I have anybody on this team that is a lock for me. Another guy, again, I didn't see how much he ended up being owned last night, but Paul Reed went from playing 22 and 15 minutes to playing 5. Not exactly sure, so not going to be using him. I think Drummond is the main piece I'm looking at here, knowing that I anticipate him playing big minutes. Only because, there's going to be a lot of games this year where it's all Joel Embiid, so they don't really need big minutes from him. So it's not the end of the world to kind of wear him out a little bit. Korkmaz has been very hot from 3 lately. 5 again last night, made 7 the game before. So, he's pricey, but you could do worse. I'd probably rather go with Grayson Allen personally, but maybe that's just the homer in me coming out on that one. All right, let's move on next. As far as Atlanta goes, this is a team that I'm not specifically trying to earmark for any players. Not saying that a guy like Trey or Collins or like that can't be good. Played a hard-fought game in Golden State last night. Curry, monster game. Now they have to go to Utah, which is a tough place to play. I think this game does have blowout potential as Utah's playing really well once again. So they're deep too. I mean, think about it. Their best players, Trae Young, Clint Capella, John Collins. But then they got Hunter, Gallo, Cam Reddish, Kevin Huerter. They have good players, Bogdanovich, that don't play good minutes. So it's just not a team that I'm really that interested in. All right, moving over to Utah. My favorite play, you've made the cover, is going to be Mike Conley, who for my money is still very, very fairly priced. Got a couple days off for his old bones to rest. Coming off 3 straight really, really good games. Hasn't done anything he can't do again in any of these games. Jordan Clarkson's been struggling, which doesn't hurt him at all. If I had to guess what his point total was tonight, give me about 35 DK points. Game gets blowouty. Maybe he doesn't play that well. But they're not forcing him into big minutes. No reason to think he won't be out there tonight. I like Mike Conley as just a solid ho-hum play top to bottom. If I needed 30 to save my life and the choice was Conley or Drew Holiday, give me Conley. If I was looking for 50, give me Drew Holiday. So it's kind of how you want to approach this thing. Clarkson has just flat out been struggling. He had a nice second half against Atlanta, went right back to shooting like garbage. Not saying he doesn't turn it around tonight, but man, when I've watched him, it ain't falling. It'll come back someday. I don't know when it's going to be, not forcing him into a lineup. For me, Mike Conley's the best player from this game. Mitchell's fine, but he's not a guy I'm looking to earmark for my lineup. So moving over to the last game, as far as Portland goes, it's been a struggle for Dame most of this year. We've seen the scores be better lately. Decent score the other day against the Lakers. Still at 9,200. I'm not forcing them into a lineup. I am not worried about him ruining my lineup in the slightest. I'd rather get to his counterpart, Paul George. I'd rather play McCollum, who, again, hasn't been perfect in a couple of games recently. But, I mean, this is a guy that, for me, at 7,200, I'm much more likely to get to CJ McCollum than I am Damian Lillard. And then they do have some decent role players, starting with, Norman Powell. I know we brought him up the other day. He was very blah, very mediocre. But this is a guy with what now? 19.5 DK points or better, in every game. He's got some, decent games in there as well. He's another one of these quote-unquote mid-tier fill-in guys today. So as the value breaks throughout the day, if there is any, which isn't as likely because it is a 3-game slate, we'll have to take a determination on how much mid-tier building we do. But Grayson Allen, Korkmaz, Mike Conley. There's a couple guys in the Clippers we're going to get to. We got Norman Powell, and then we also got Rocco, who had a terrible start to the year, but now 3 straight games with over 26 DK points. 3 balls started to fall a little bit, and he's got one of those, the steals have been coming. He's been playing better the last 3 days. So at 4,300, he's another guy that's wildly in play. I was wondering what was up with him the first, week or two of the season, but he's starting to look like the guy that we know him to be. This is a guy we've seen at 6K for, large chunks of his career, at least into the fives. So it's not a surprise to see him start to giving you better DFS scores. There's other guys that you can, look at, Larry Nance, etc. But I don't know, nobody's a priority. I like the middle tier guys again: CJ McCollum, Norman Powell, Robert Covington. Last up, speaking of mid-tier guys, the Clippers are loaded with them. Let's start with Nick Batum. Okay, let's admit it. Like, obviously, he's not what he was in Portland 10 years ago, whatever, but he's still a decent player that does enough things. One of these days, he's going to have more assists. He gets decent steals. He knocks down threes. This is a guy with over 30, 3 of his last 4 games, and a couple of them where, he didn't play as many minutes, like 28, 29, where we've seen him up in the 30s a bunch of times. So I think Batum is a solid play. They did get Serge Ibaka back. He was in instant foul trouble last game. He's been out for a while, so I'm probably going to take another wait-and-see game with him for sure. You also have Terrence Mann, who very similar to Nick Batum, very reliable scores, very much in that mid-tier build. Not a must or anything like that, but a guy who's quote-unquote in play. And then I like Paul George. Home game here. He's been solid all year. I would rather get to Giannis. I trust it a little bit more, but he's had plenty of nice games right here as well. So, he's quote unquote in play. Reggie Jackson's had some moments lately as well. Monster game against Minnesota, looking a little bit more like playoff Reggie Jackson. Also, not a guy that you're earmarking and shortlisting or anything like that, but a guy that is quote unquote in play. So let's just kind of do like a small lineup build, knowing that things are darn well going to change as the day progresses. So I'm going to start with Mike Conley right here. Move over to the shooting guard position. Who are the guys that we're going to be looking at? CJ McCollum, Shake Milton, if he were to be starting, Grayson Allen. So those are the choices. Let's just put Grayson Allen in there. Knowing without, still no DiVincenzo, still no Middleton. All right, moving over to the small forward position. So we got Paul George, Batum, Norman Powell, even Danny Green is going to be a guy that you could take a look at right here. Let's see what happens if we start building around. Let's go with Norman Powell because he's only small forward eligible. Here, do we even have a center that we're looking at today? Oh, yeah. Can't forget about Andre Drummond. And then let's see what happens if we put up with Giannis right there. So now we're down to 46-66 per offensive guy. And going over to the guard position. Again, if Shake Milton's starting, I like him. But until I see that, I don't trust him in the slightest. If you're super desperate for cheap guys, George Hill is out there. Not very excited about that one, but he is playing minutes. He didn't make any shots last game. Could easily have a better game right here. Let's take a look. Who else we're looking at right here? We got Korkmaz, Pat Connaughton, Terrence Mann. Let's go with start with Korkmaz, knowing that this could change. You got Batum. This is where you might be looking for some value. Because there's really nobody. George Hill, ugh. Really isn't anybody right down here we're looking at. All right, so where would we want to make a move, essentially? It's hard to get away from Drummond and Giannis, but, what happens if you take Giannis? Yeah, I can't do that. I don't like George, Trey, Lillard, Mitchell enough. I definitely want to try to make that a priority. So we might have to make another change in here somewhere. Is there anybody really, really cheap? Danny Green. Okay. I prefer Norman Powell, but what changes up if we put Danny Green in this lineup? Which, again, you're not very excited about that, but, we saw the 30 minutes last night, which we like. He's kind of consistently right up there in the low 20s. More likely to hit downside than upside, so it's not a great play or anything like that. But if we were to make a move like that, well, now we can end up with, any one of these. Rocco. Take Batum out of here. Go with Covington. That should also help. Now we move over to the utility position. We can get Bobby Portis in our lives. So that's something you feel a little bit more comfortable with. And if we take out Portis, Korkmaz is definitely not needed. Moving over to the small forward position. And even here, you put Korkmaz now. Let's go Norman Powell. Guard. Just saying we're putting in Korkmaz. Now we're at 4,800. Now we got, you can make a decision between some of these guys out here. So early in the day, it's going to be something along those lines. There's a couple guys in here that we mentioned that you can take a look at. Drew Holiday, a couple other 76ers. I don't have a lot from the Atlanta-Utah game outside of Mike Conley that I'm really digging on. So I like the first game and the last game a little bit better, but we'll have to reevaluate when ownership percentages come out. So that's what I got for today, guys. Thank you and have a great day.